If you've ever found yourself lying awake at 2 a.m. with your mind racing, feeling absolutely exhausted and not being able to go back to sleep, you are not alone, and this is for you. Today's Menopause Monday is all about insomnia and sleep difficulties in and during perimenopause and menopause. Sleep issues affect more than half of women throughout the menopausal phase of life. But there are a few things that you can do to help improve your chances of getting a good night's sleep and also mitigating those occurrences when you do wake up and your mind starts racing. And isn't it ridiculous the amount of insignificant things that suddenly become mountains and you're lying there at 3:30 and it's just rubbish. It's just gobbledygook in your head, but for some reason it just seems super important and you become anxious about it. Well, don't know about you, but that certainly happens and happened to me. So today we're going to be covering a few sort of sleeping tips and also just to explain sleep cycles, what to watch out for, and how to really increase your chances of getting a really good night's sleep. If you're new to my channel, welcome. My name is Kate Hartley. I share a weekly video with you every Monday around something related to menopause. If there's anything you would like me to discuss or research on your behalf, please let me know. Drop it in the comments box and I will make sure to add that to my rotation. There's different types of sleep problems. Sometimes it might be you have trouble falling to sleep. It might be that you wake up just prior to midnight, if you like me and you get to bed relatively early and then you can't go back to sleep. It might be that you're waking up at 2-3 a.m. and your mind's racing and then you're awake for an hour to 2 hours and you're thinking, well, should I just get up or crack on with my day? Then you go back to sleep and then you wake up and you feel absolutely ghastly when your alarm goes off. Or it might be just poor fragmented sleep on the whole. And if you wear a certain device, there's quite a lot of smart devices these days. I will go over those in a few minutes, but they might be telling you you've had a good night's sleep, but you feel exhausted. They might be telling you you've had a poor night's sleep and you're thinking you don't feel too bad. I will cover all that and more in today's episode. So what's going on with our hormones? Obviously, as we go through our perimenopausal years, beyond into postmenopause, our estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, our sex hormones are very erratic and then they start to decline. Estrogen and progesterone in particular affect how we experience sleep. Estrogen influences temperature regulation, serotonin and melatonin production. Serotonin is one of your happy hormones. Melatonin is your sleepy hormone. Incidentally, serotonin, one of your happy hormones, is the precursor to melatonin. So if you're low in serotonin, you're highly likely to be low in melatonin too. And also how sensitive we are to pain. So if you've had a bad night's sleep and your estrogen levels are falling, it might be that you just feel more ropey after having had a bad night's sleep than you might have done, prior to perimenopause starting. And then there are the vasomotor symptoms. Those are your hot flushes, your hot flashes, your night sweats. Again, estrogen controls that part of the brain that triggers the hot flashes. So if you're waking up absolutely drenched in sweat, or you're just waking up, you're feeling stressy, and then all of a sudden the hot flush descends upon you and sort of envelops you in this burning heat of an oven, that is down to either erratic estrogen levels or falling estrogen levels. So it might be that if you didn't have hot flushes, you'd actually sleep quite well. I know they really interrupted my sleep through perimenopause, and when I'm not eating or drinking the right sort of stuff, or if I'm very anxious or just under a lot of stress, it's generally the hot flushes that wake me up. I think probably because my cortisol levels are rising, so I'm starting to feel anxious for whatever reason. It might be nutritionally, it might be again hormonally, but then when I wake up, I often then will get feel really hot and sweaty for a few moments. And I'm also going to go over a few tips to help you if you're in the thick of that, because night sweats are one of my worst symptoms. They were vile. I would literally wake up drenched in sweat. It was horrible. And then hot flushes were one of my main problems as well. So, it could come on and within a minute I was dripping in sweat. And I'm not a sweaty person. I don't really sweat when I work out. So I really had to struggle with that. I don't take HRT. Perhaps if I did take HRT, I might not have had the hot flushes to the degree that I did have. But because they were such a key problem for me, I've really gone into the sort of lifestyle things that influence them. And largely it's down to what I eat or drink. And also, just sort of my general lifestyle. Am I managing stress effectively or well enough? And that has a profound impact on my hot flushes. So I do recommend, if you're really struggling with hot flushes, please start a food and drink journal. just do it for a couple of weeks. You will see what's triggering hot flushes, what nights you sleep better, what nights you sleep more poorly. And also estrogen has an effect on the health of your urethra and your bladder. So it might be that, you used to be able to sleep through the night, and now you're having to go up and go to the toilet, once or twice a night. That obviously will interrupt your sleep patterns too. So like I just mentioned earlier, HRT can help reduce hot flushes. If you're struggling with insomnia through the menopausal years, it might be that your doctor would suggest you take HRT to help with your sleep. I know a lot of women who have been prescribed antidepressants, SSRIs, to help them with their sleep, and they found that that has really helped them. So HRT might help, it may not. I'm not a great advocate or a fan of taking antidepressants unless you're really depressed. I think there are more holistic ways of going around it. But, if you're in the thick of it and you're literally desperate at the end of your tether, and you think, I just need to sleep, I don't care what they bloody give me, I just need to sleep, then, it might be that it's worth having some mild SSRIs to help you get into a healthier sleeping pattern. And then once you feel like you're sleeping well, then maybe you want to start to back those off again. I don't think taking antidepressants long term, unless you actually need them for your mental health, is going to be beneficial for you. But that's my own personal opinion. So, take that with a grain of salt. If you find that you've been taking for them for several years and you feel great on them and they keep you on a steady keel, I think that's really important. Everybody is unique. We all come with our different environments. We all come with genetic blueprints that are slightly different. We all experience life in slightly different ways. So what works for me may not work for you, and vice versa. So how does our sleep actually work? We tend to sleep in 90-minute cycles. So when you're earlier on, once you've just gone to bed, it's likely that you'll have a light sleep and then you'll go into a deep restorative sleep quite quickly. As you progress through those cycles, we normally have between 4 and 6 of those a night. You'll find that as you've slept for more hours, you're getting towards the morning, you're going to have fewer of the deeper sleep, or so you'll spend less time in the deep sleep mode and more time in your rapid eye movement mode. That's often why you might wake up and you're in the middle of a dream, because you're in that rapid eye movement phase, and that is when you tend to dream. And if you have a sleep gadget like I think some Fitbits do them, the Aura Ring, there are various smartwatches that can track your sleep. They are not known to be super effective at getting the amount of the different qualities of sleep that you're getting. So, you might think, oh, I feel really well rested. And then you look at your Aura Ring data and it says, oh, you only spent 20% of your night in deep restorative sleep and a large portion of your night in lighter sleep or REM sleep. They are not that accurate. If you are feeling like you slept well, I would definitely use that as better feedback than what you might be seeing on the screen. They're really good at spotting patterns and trends, like whether you're going to bed later, if you're waking more often throughout the course of the night. But I wouldn't put too much emphasis on the percentages that they give you in the morning. And there's actually a term, because so many of us has become obsessed with the quality and the quantity of different types of sleep. It's called orthosomnia. So, there are so many people worrying because of these gadgets that their sleep is not effective enough. So just be mindful of the fact that while they can indicate patterns and trends, they might not be as accurate on depicting exactly how long you spent in each of your sleeping phases. I would think very much about, is your energy stable? Can you think clearly? Do you feel like you slept pretty well? I would say that is a much better measure than a number on a screen. And if you want to influence your sleep quality, here is what really helps. Strength training. Keep active. I promise you, it makes such a big difference to the quality of your sleep. You just feel more relaxed. You feel more in control of your life, which makes you feel more resilient. You will start to feel the benefits of strength training very, very quickly, but it does also impact in a positive way how you sleep and and make sure that you're getting plenty of that restorative, immune boosting sleep. Reduce your alcohol. That suppresses the deep sleep and also your REM. Alcohol is really going to negatively impact your sleep. So while you might like, I love a couple of glasses of red wine in the evening. I know it probably does have a negative impact on my sleep, but I don't think it impacts it that badly, particularly if I stop drinking quite early. So for me, I would tend to have maybe a glass of wine about sort of 5:30, 6 o'clock. I might have another half a glass or maybe a full glass, but then I've finished by the time sort of 7:30 comes around. So, I'm stopping drinking relatively early compared to when I go to bed. And I find it doesn't really aggravate my sleep patterns too much. But I do think it probably increases my chances of having a hot flush during the night, which then, of course, might well wake me up. Again, we're all different. I think I have quite a good propensity to drink alcohol. I know other people are a bit more sensitive to alcohol than I might be. So just take it as, if you can reduce your alcohol or ideally cut it out, you will definitely improve the quality of your sleep. Keep your bedroom cool. It makes a massive difference. It's scientifically proven that you don't want to be cold in your bed, but keep the air in your bedroom cool and refreshed. Again, if you're struggling with hot flushes, there's nothing nicer that, you just chuck the covers off and you can lie there and you can feel a bit cooler. It will definitely help the quality of your sleep if your bedroom is cool enough, but just make sure that you're nice and cozy in bed. As hard as it can be, try and manage stress and anxiety to the best of your ability. Sometimes that's just impossible. And sometimes there will be phases when you wake up and you're ruminating and you're worried. And I've been through a lot of that myself over the last couple of years. And it does have a negative impact on your sleep. Sleep also does tend to decline. The amount of sleep that we take or have, quality sleep, tends to decline as we get older. When you're younger, you do need more sleep. As we get older, we don't need quite so much sleep. So chasing a perfect ratio isn't really necessary. I would focus more on how you feel when you wake up. And here's a few tips to help you sleep better and also recover more easily if you're waking up during the course of the night and you're struggling to go back to sleep. I'm a ninja at it. I've tried many different things, and some of these that I'm going to be mentioning to you are what I still use daily now if I wake up and I can't go back to sleep. So first of all, one of the best things that you can do is get outside into the daylight within about 20 to 30 minutes of having woken up. The reason for that is it sort of sets your body clock up. So in the morning, you have a natural spike of cortisol. It's designed to sort of get you up and motivated and on with your day. And then as the day progresses, your cortisol levels fall and your melatonin, so your sleepy hormone, starts to rise. And getting that early UV exposure, daylight exposure, is what helps make sure that you get that melatonin coming out as the day goes on. Also, daylight exposure is really good for your serotonin levels. So if you remember earlier, I mentioned that serotonin is the precursor to melatonin. If you are not living a healthy-ish lifestyle, it's highly likely that your serotonin levels will not be as effective as they might once have been. Gut health is huge for serotonin. Between 90 to 95% of our serotonin is made in our gut. So eat things like fermented foods, eat plenty of vegetables. That's going to keep your gut healthy. It will help to boost your serotonin levels, and that will then help to boost your melatonin levels and helping you make sure that you get a better night's sleep. Make sure your bedroom is cool and dark. Your coolness around about sort of 16 degrees centigrade, that's around about 60 degrees Fahrenheit. You might think, oh, that's cold, but not when you're snuggled up and you've got a nice warm duvet or blanket or however you sleep. That brings me on to weighted blankets too. So if you're struggling with stress and anxiety, you might find that having a weighted blanket, you can buy them, you can quite easily make your own as well, but that will give you a sense of comfort. Again, it's scientifically proven to be really, really effective. So if you are feeling really antsy and like you just feel isolated maybe or alone, a weighted blanket might be the way to go. Limit your screens for about 45 minutes before you go to bed. That does, to a degree, include television. I know vast majority of us watch television before we go to bed. See, does it affect you or not? If you're able to fall asleep well, maybe it does not affect you. To be honest, television for me doesn't really seem to negatively impact my sleep too much, but certainly the computer screen and my phone screen does. So I have this rule that even when I'm really, really busy, unless it's just like crazy deadline that I've got to hit, I work absolutely no later than 8 p.m. And ideally, I shut it off by about 6 p.m. But if the push comes to shove, 8 p.m. is my absolute maximum real, screen exposure, unless I know I'm going to have to work a lot later because of something very, very important that's come up. And then I know I'm not going to sleep that well that night. People say, and sleep experts say, make sure that you go to bed and get up at the same time every day and night. And I'm not entirely sure I agree with that. They obviously say it for a reason. I think if you're not having like super, super sleep problems, yeah, if you feel tired an hour or an hour and a half before you're due to go to bed, I would go to bed earlier. I know when I've felt really ropey on a few occasions, and I might go to bed by 8 o'clock, and I sleep so well, and I will sleep through till sort of 5:30, 6 o'clock. 5:30-ish is not my normal sort of wake up time. I tend to go to bed by sort of 9:30. And I found that as I've been focusing more on the quality of my sleep, so being a bit bossy with my sleep, following sleep hygiene rules, I've noticed that my sleep has improved a lot. I do sometimes wake up. I might wake up 2 or 3 times during the night. I find that's largely, obviously, if I'm worried about things, that is going to wake me up. But I think what I eat really does have a big impact. And I'm going to start tracking my food again very shortly just to see where those patterns lie, because sometimes I can sleep just so well, and then for no real issue at all. There might be 1 or 2 other nights where it's just like I could not sleep. I couldn't go to sleep. I kept waking up. And clearly there's, if I'm not under severe stress or anxiety at the time, there's something that's triggered that wakefulness. So tracking what you eat and drink does have a really great impact on your sleep quality and also your hot flushes, because they're very closely linked. And for the sake of 2 weeks of tracking, you will find really, really interesting patterns. You might also find when you start to track that some nights you might not need to go up to spend a penny. Well, that also could be diet related. So tracking for a couple of weeks will reveal all sorts of information to you. So be mindful of, how did you manage to go to sleep easily? Did you wake up during the night? How many times did you wake up during the night? Did you have to wake up and go to the toilet? If so, how many times did that happen? And then, when you're looking for all these indicators, did you wake up with a hot flush? Did you just wake up because you weren't sweaty, but you just felt antsy? That will help you then find a pattern between what you eat and drink, and then you know whether you can avoid them or not. So if you wake up sweaty or with hot flushes, first of all, sweaty. So let's deal with night sweats first. When I was going through the worst part of it, I eventually ended up sleeping on a towel. I was single, so it was lucky. So I had access to a large bed. And so I'd wake up sweaty and I'd go and lie on the other side of the bed, get a fresh towel. I used to wear a nightshirt at that stage because, again, it would just absorb some of the sweat. I'd strip that nightshirt off. It would be freezing cold in my bedroom, put a dry one on, dry towel, and sleep on the other side of the bed. And then I'd literally wash the whole thing in the next morning. And I did that for a long time. It was, my night sweats were absolutely ferocious. And if I'd known what I know now back then, I think I could have mitigated it so much better than because that's when I was learning about perimenopause. With hot flushes or flashes, and this also applies if you have night sweats, because it will help to cool you down faster. You can get those spray atomizer bottles. I would definitely have one of those in your car, in your office, where your workplace, but also next to your bed, because they're really refreshing. If you wake up sweaty, or you've just woken up, you can feel a hot flush happening, just spray yourself off. Another great idea is to have a wet flannel or a damp flannel, and maybe put some drops of lavender essential oil on it, put it in a little plastic bag so it stays nice and damp throughout the course of the night. And then if you wake up hot and sweaty, you can just dab your neck, your chest, your arms, your face, and the back of your neck. And again, that can just be, the fragrance of the lavender is soothing in any case. That is relaxing. It will help you go back to sleep. But it's just such a lovely, cooling, cleansing thing to do. So I would definitely consider that if you're waking up with hot flushes. Bamboo bedding, although it's a bit more costly than cotton bedding, it feels cool to the touch. So if you're really sweaty, you know, by the time you stuck your arm and your leg out, if you've got bamboo bedding, that feels quite a lot colder when it's exposed to the cold air in your bedroom. So again, that's something you might want to consider swapping to. If you're waking up or struggling to go to sleep at night, because I find reading, I love my Kindle, but I find reading on my phone at night time is that blue screen again. And so what I do is I listen to an audio book when I go to bed. So I lie flat. I broke my neck years ago, so I lie literally completely flat back. I do some stretches. It's just kind of my little routine that I do in bed. They're very relaxing, and I listen. I put a timer on my Audible for about 30 minutes, and I listen to an audio book. And generally, I've fallen asleep way before that 30-minute limit comes to an end. And then likewise, if I wake up through the course of the night and I'm thinking, oh, I just can't go back to sleep, I put my book on 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and it just takes your mind off a busy brain. But you also get sort of into the story, or you might want to listen to relaxing music or maybe a meditation track. If for whatever reason you're struggling to go back to sleep, you're listening to the book and it's an hour and a half later and you're still listening to it, that is when I would consider getting up. Not for the rest of the night, but I did it not long ago. One of my dogs had to go out, and I knew that I was like, I'm wide awake. I made myself a raw organic hot cacao drink. I took it to bed. I popped the news on for half an hour. I watched the news. I really enjoyed my hot organic cacao. There's no sugar in it. It's just literally the raw bitter stuff with some oat milk. And it was quite a treat. Rather than seeing it, oh, I can't go back to sleep, I tried to really get into the mindset of enjoying this little break during the sort of early hours. It's almost like my little party. And because I had that mindset around it, by the time I'd sort of had half an hour and I thought, oh, I'm starting to feel a little bit dopey again now. So I turned off the television, put my book on for 15 minutes, and I felt straight to sleep, didn't even hear the 15 minutes of the book. So I think sometimes just getting up and changing, you know, your state for a while, if you're really struggling to go back to sleep, can actually be quite helpful. As for daytime naps, I know some people swear by them and they don't suit me. If I have a nap, I just feel ghastly afterwards. But if you're somebody who benefits from naps, then I would suggest have it earlier in the day rather than later in the day. I would just make sure that it's not having a negative impact on making you go to bed later, because we do tend to sleep better quality sleep earlier on. You know, I think the hours before midnight tend to count for more than the hours after midnight as far as your health goes. So if a nap means that you're able to stay up later, that might actually be having a negative impact on you long term. So, you know, if a nap is your treat, maybe take your nap a bit earlier, or just go to bed slightly earlier and make that your treat instead. So all in all, if you're starting to stress about getting a good night's sleep, that might be negatively impacting your sleep. If you're really struggling, I would go and see your healthcare provider. If you've seen them already and they sort of brushed you off, go and see them again or go and see another one, because sleep is the absolute foundation of good health. You know, the sleep deprivation is a torture tactic for a reason. Sleep is so important. It's when your brain flushes the glial cells to help remove the plaques. It's when your body restores. It's when it heals. If you're strength training, that's when it helps to build your muscles. So sleep is an absolute key cornerstone of good health. And you know, you know that already, but if you're struggling to sleep well, stressing about that is only going to have a negative impact on sleeping well. So if you are really waking up and you know, an hour and a half at night and you just can't go back to sleep, I would try just that pattern interrupt for a little while of maybe getting up and having a glass of milk or whatever your tipple is. I would avoid coffee for sure, unless you have decaf or a herbal coffee. Yes, the raw organic cacao has a small amount of caffeine in it. I don't find that affects me. In fact, I can still drink coffee before I go to bed. I went out for dinner last night. I had a coffee after my meal and slept really well. So, you know, again, we're all different, and caffeine doesn't seem to have a negative impact on me like it might do on other people. But do be mindful of drinking caffeinated drinks, because they might be having a negative impact on your sleep. So I'd be interested to hear, you know, drop it in the comments below. What do you find helps your sleep? Or are you stuck in the thick of not being able to sleep? Have you spoken to a healthcare provider, and do you feel like you've been given good advice? or do you feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall? And if you found this helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to make sure you don't miss future episodes, subscribe to the channel. Then you'll see there's a little blue dot next to my circle at the top of your list of YouTube channels that you've subscribed to. And then you'll know that when my next video goes live, you'll get a little notification. Thank you so much for your company, and I will look forward to chatting with you again next week.